Ambulance is an American remake of the 2005 Danish action thriller Ambulancen. Directed by Michael Bay and starring Jake Gyllenhaal, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, and Asa Gonzalez, it serves its purpose as a satisfactory action flick that should entertain fans of Bay while annoying most of his detractors. In Los Angeles, former soldier Will Sharp urgently needs $231,000 for his wife's surgery but cannot find anybody willing to assist. With no one else left to turn to, Will reaches out to his criminal adoptive brother Danny, who convinces him to participate in a bank heist. After the heist goes horribly wrong, Will and Danny steal a nearby ambulance occupied by EMT Cam and her patient, the severely injured LAPD officer Zach. As the police quickly give chase, Will and Danny take Cam and Zach hostage, using them as leverage during their lengthy escape throughout the city. Michael Bay has always been a highly divisive director. Because of his penchant for extravagant explosions, childish attempts at humor, and generally valuing style over substance, many people tend to view him as a filmmaker who only makes movies that pander to simple-minded audiences. With that said, there are also those who love his films for that very reason, which is obvious given their large box office returns worldwide. From a personal perspective, I believe he has made far more bad movies than good, with Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen being one of the worst movies I have ever seen. However, I don't think all of his films are completely terrible because I do actually like The Rock, and I suppose his latest one, Ambulance, is also pretty good for the most part, which isn't really saying a whole lot. Distinguishing itself from the original Danish film, this remake feels more bombastic and polished in the way it tells its story. Car chases often result in a big explosion, and that gung-ho American way of doing things makes for a considerably different viewing experience. Though the basic plot remains the same, there are some notable changes. For example, instead of small Nordic towns and forests, we have the sprawling concrete jungle of Los Angeles to serve as the primary setting. This allowed for more police presence during the film's car chase scenes, since vehicular pursuits in LA are not exactly an unusual occurrence. Additionally, the film uses its new setting as an opportunity to sprinkle in some social commentary on America's healthcare system. The very fact that a war veteran like Will needs to involve himself in a dangerous heist just to pay off his wife's medical bills is quite a sad thought to ponder upon, and makes for a believable excuse for him to turn to a life of crime. In that regard, he seemed awfully similar to Ed Harris's character in The Rock, another military man who wasn't receiving the respect he believed he deserved. All these changes helped the film stand on its own from its source material, unlike the American remake of The Guilty, which copied and pasted the original script nearly word for word. Compared to most of his previous work, Bay's direction here is fairly decent overall. Thanks to his quick, fast-paced editing, the film is never boring and was able to hold my attention throughout its 136-minute runtime. Bay also does a nice enough job of focusing on character development during the first act, which made me care enough about the main characters for me to wonder how things will turn out for them in the end. This is quite a drastic contrast to the Transformers series, where Bay would overuse slow motion to pad out the action and not allow the characters enough time to develop into what could be considered real people. However, what almost ruined the entire movie for me was some of Bay's typical creative decisions. One thing I've been rather vocal about is my hatred of excessive shaky cam in movies, and this film takes that aversion to a whole new level. Many of the film's best car chase scenes become an exercise in motion sickness as the camera fidgets around like a child that has eaten too much sugar. While I can understand how intense escape scenes need to look on screen, there's no need to make the action so blurry you can't make out what the actors are saying or doing. Not every scene was like this, fortunately, but the ones that mattered have them featured prominently, which proves problematic. Another thing that bothered me was the overabundance of uninteresting supporting characters. The original had only a handful of characters that made the story more involving, whereas here the film keeps cutting between scenes with bland police officers trying to keep things under control and the typical criminal stereotypes that the two brothers are in cahoots with. Bay simply doesn't have the skills as a director to balance these different types of scenes together with so many characters, causing moments that should have been used to build up a tense atmosphere to become bogged down with too many people doing so much at once. Quality over quantity is the key here, a concept Michael Bay still can't grasp even after all these years. In yet another lead role in an American remake of a Danish film, Jake Gyllenhaal is able to carry the film based solely on his performance alone. This doesn't automatically mean I thought he was good though, as I noticed at times he couldn't decide whether he was playing someone level-headed or unhinged. In the original film, it was set in stone which of the two brothers was the sensible one and which one was the wild card. Whereas here Gyllenhaal's character Danny claims to be the sensible one, yet he constantly makes crazy impulsive decisions that end up affecting the outcome of the story. Despite this, there's something about Gyllenhaal's screen presence that can make audiences pay attention to his every word. As Danny's adoptive brother, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II plays the war hero about as well as you'd expect in a film directed by Michael Bay. He served his country, risked his life, and now faces injustice from the real world upon returning home. In other words, he's essentially another stock character of a downtrodden soldier with little depth outside of the fact that he's trying to help his family rather than just himself. While I did feel sorry for Will, I couldn't help but think he could have been played by virtually any other actor because Abdul-Mateen doesn't add anything unique to the role. That's not to say I thought he was bad, it's just that I never really felt like he stood out too much. The best written character in the entire film was Cam, played by Asa Gonzalez. Out of the three leads, I'd say that she has the most interesting character arc. Her counterpart in the original Danish movie was simply a first aid worker trying to keep her cool after being taken hostage, whereas in this film she is given a bit more backstory relating to her motivations. Although one thing that kind of annoyed me was how Michael Bay just couldn't resist the urge to focus on Gonzalez's attractive looks. There were times where Bay would zoom the camera in on her face to show how physically beautiful she is, similar to how he would shoehorn fanservice shots of Megan Fox into the first two Transformers films. Now I haven't met too many paramedics, but I'm pretty certain most of them wouldn't bother trying to look glamorous considering there are more important matters at hand. Although my overall opinion on Michael Bay as a filmmaker remains unchanged, I am willing to admit there is maybe some degree of competence left in him. Unlike some of his previous films, Ambulance at least has some honorable intent, and that is to show how paramedics are able to function under extreme circumstances. These heroes now have both this film and the original Danish one to help pay tribute to their line of work, which probably would have gone unnoticed otherwise. As a result, Bay's film is a success, albeit marginally.